just because that voice is loud doesn't mean it's telling the truth.
Educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work, an award-winning podcast where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
I thank you very much for tuning in to the show today. And so, once again, we're in this place of talking about imposter syndrome. And here's the point. Imposter syndrome often shows up as an inner dialogue that questions your worth or your qualifications. How many of you deal with that? How many of you have questioned whether or not you're worthy of being in the position that you're in? I've been there. And I have a special guest today. We're going through this whole process together of growing together. And just so happens she's probably the best person that knows me well. And she can speak to me questioning myself and my qualifications and my worth. It's none other than my wife, Kafi. Kafi, thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. You speak so eloquently. And so something like that, in my head, because you speak so eloquently and so businesslike, I can question whether or not I am worthy on this show. If I am worthy to speak because of who you are. People get intimidated by that. And I only can speak for myself. I've been in that position. I didn't always understand that my voice should be louder than the one that's questioning who I really am. And so it was really difficult for me to get that. I compared myself to too many other individuals. And again, not understanding my own worth in that situation. Not understanding that I have value in how I'm handling customers and how I answer their questions or their problems. And I wonder if some of you are dealing with something similar where do you see the value in what you bring to the table? And so, Kafi, I'm just using you as an example because I would put myself up against those that spoke eloquent because I felt intimidated because I didn't speak that way. I don't speak that way 100% of the time. I can, but I got to think about it. It's like I need a script in front of me in order for me to do that. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are imposter syndrome is just one of those things that, like you said, so many of us deal with. It's just us getting in our heads, us overthinking about things. And I don't know necessarily that it is that someone is better than we are, but I think we get in our own thoughts, as you stated, and we start a comparison.
Right.
And sometimes it's okay to compare because you want to compare. That might be your goal. But you have to, a lot of times our goals are, linked to a mentor or linked to some figure, so then you compare yourself to that. But I think imposter syndrome is when you get into your feelings, you get into yourself and you're like, how did I get here? And I'm not worthy of being where I am right now. So for myself, at times I get overwhelmed with things, and that me being overwhelmed creates that imposter syndrome part. It makes me feel not worthy because I am overwhelmed. And then I begin to think that okay, somebody else could probably handle all this and they wouldn't be overwhelmed. So then I don't feel true and I don't feel validated in my situation at that particular time because I feel fake. I feel fraudulent. I don't feel that I'm due with whatever I'm doing because I feel like I can't really do this, you know. So that's my thought.
And I agree. I agree with everything that you said because it makes me sit back and think for a moment of where I've been to where I am today and how I would compare myself because I heard it a lot. I heard it a lot where I should be compared to someone else, but I've also heard where people were saying, hey, you should be like Maurice as well. So I'm going to go back to maybe one of my earliest memories of this, which is in elementary school, where people would say, I would have a teacher to say, you should be like Maurice because I was quiet. I didn't say a whole lot in class, right? And so you should be like Maurice, especially if you all want to get out early to go to recess, right? Or because y'all spoke too much or too often, it's the bell was ringing right now for y'all to leave class, but because y'all little group want to stay and talk amongst yourself when I told everyone to settle down, well, y'all should be like Maurice because look at who's one of the first people who's leaving on this Friday afternoon. Because I don't want to be here just like you don't want to be here. But guess what? He's going home. I've heard that, right? And so, so then, now I'm being set apart, I think unfairly in some cases. But again, not understanding that there was value in what I was doing. Was I a role model or was I one that caused more friction in that situation? And was I someone else or was I my authentic self? I felt like I need to be like everybody else so I wouldn't be set apart and be ostracized among my classmates. That's how I felt. So what did I do later on in the year? As time had gone on, I wasn't as nice as I might have been in the middle of the year. It was getting warmer outside. Everybody else was talking, I was talking. Because I didn't want to be looked at as different. And so, did I lose my power? Did I lose myself in that process? I might have. But I think what needed to happen in this situation is understanding and recognizing that I was having a conflict with myself, which ultimately drove me to make some really, really weird and crazy decisions. And that wasn't necessarily beneficial for me in the long run. It wasn't beneficial for the class. It wasn't beneficial to the teacher. And guess what? It showed up on my report card too. So I think that we all need to recognize those moments that we question whether or not we belong in this situation or not. Question whether or not we are worthy or are we qualified to live up to this, because I didn't feel like I was worthy enough to be set apart at such an early age. I didn't see the value in that. So I questioned it, and it drove me to make some really, really crazy decisions that ultimately showed up on something that as important as my report card.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're saying a lot there, and I think, even though you're talking about elementary school, but a lot of that shows up in, the courtyard and the playground of corporate America, because likewise, individuals are pointed out that they're, high performers. And,
Yes.
Hey, we all should be, that person's picture goes up on the wall because they're employee of the month. And, or certain boards, hey, this person has X number of sales and we all want to be like Bob or like Jan. So, that pressure, I think, also adds to us feeling and that internal feeling of imposter syndrome. And I think the one thing I want to share with the audience is that imposter syndrome is something that you do to yourself. I don't think it's anything necessarily that people do to you. It's kind of your own thought that you feel like you don't fit in the space.
I.e., me in the classroom.
You feel like you're not good enough and you're not worthy to sit at the table.
Mm-hmm.
There's a seat there with your name on it, but you feel as though I'm not good enough. I'm not, up to par. I have a degree, but I got all C's and D's. I didn't graduate with Latin honors. Those types of things. So sometimes we fall back because we feel as though we're not good enough.
Right.
And, as you said, we have to be careful to recognize where we are so that we can make the right decisions moving forward. But again, that's all within our heads. I think a lot of it is within our head.
And I agree. So we need to do something in order for us to get over it.
Okay.
We need to name it. Hey, it is imposter syndrome as to why we're making this decision in that little voice. What gives us power over it? Because a lot of times if we ignore it, it's going to continue to control us. It's going to continue to make us make these decisions that are not ones that really work in our favor. So again, I'm going to repeat it, but I'm going to give it to you in our normal process, which is why it matters, right? And why it matters is naming it gives you power over it. Ignoring it only gives it more control. So let's not give that tiny little voice, that little person that's sitting on your shoulder, whatever the situation is, let's not give it power. Let's not continue to give it power. Let's get control over it. And now that we have recognized it and we understand what it is, and now that we have control over it, what's the limit? There is no limit. Because right now you've just claimed the floor. And everything from that point forward should be nothing but success. So I appreciate everyone for listening today. And Kafi, thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Thanks again, Maurice, for having me.
And I thank you for listening to That Will Nevr Work podcast. And I will talk to you a little bit later.
Thanks for listening. Follow Maurice Chisholm on social media to stay connected and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work. Or will it?